Hi, let's continue with variable scoping. Up to now, we had lessons about variables and we did not have any problems about variables. But let's remember nested blocks. We solved that in a very simple way. But when we talk about variables, they have a meaning because variables have their own scopes. So, what is a scope? We can simply say that scopes are the bounds that variables are valid, or where you can reach that variable. Now I think it's better to explain that in an example. Let's write declare and vouter let's write it outer. And our begin keyword, and let's print it. Let's execute our set so output on command first. And then run our code. Okay, when we run this, there is no problem. We solved that kind of example. Now let's add an inner block to this anonymous block. Let's copy that. And write something different inside, for example. And our keyword. Let's clear here and run again. We can see that the inner block can see the variable. There is no problem in here too. So let's now create another variable inside our inner block. But before this, let me say you something. Do you know about indenting? Indenting means putting some spaces before your code and aligning your statements with the related statement. If you look at here carefully, my first begin and last end are in the same alignment. Then let's look at inside. The second begin is in the same level with the related end. Then I put one more space before the inst dbms output to say that this code is owned by the inner block. Code indenting is important for readability. I strongly recommend you to indent your code because it will be a really messy code and it will be really hard to read your code otherwise. But code maintenance is very important. You will see that you will update codes more than you create a new one. So if you create your code in a more readable way, it will be much easier to maintain. I have a good news for you. If you select your code and press Ctrl F7 in SQL Developer, it will automatically format your code. Let's do that. As we can see, it formatted my code. Or you can right click and choose format. These are the same. You may like its code design or not. It depends on how you like it. I sometimes use it, but generally do the indents by myself. Okay, let's add our new variable. In here, I write my declare keyword and let's say vinner varchar2, let's say 30 and equal to, let's say, inner variable. And let me copy and paste in here to show the inner variable inside. Okay, let's clear up here and run it. We can see that inner block can both reach the inner variable and the outer variable. The question is, Can outer block reach the inner variable? Let's check it. To see that, we can try to output the inner variable out of its scope. Let's write our dbms output right here, for example. Let's write outside inner and run our code. When we run that, we had an error saying that the identifier vinner must be declared. Now we understand from here that the scope of our variables are the range between its begin and end keywords. So the outer variable can be reached by the inner block. This outer can be reached by the inner block, but the inner variable cannot be reached out of its block. This is the inner variable, and this is its block. This is its scope then. And this cannot be reached outside of its scope, like in here, for example. What if we declare the same named variables in both blocks? What happens then? Any variable we text. Let's comment here and copy that. We text, let's say alt text. And another we text in here. So I'm copying that again and commenting here. Let's write v text here again. And the value is, let's say, in text. And let's copy that. Inside inner we text. If we say that inside outer and v text again, these are the same variables, so we will see the same values. But in here, let's write our new variable. Okay, we create two same named variables, first in the first block and the second one is in the inner block. Then we try to output them inside the block and outside the block. Let's see what happens now. As we can see, no problem. We can create same named variables in different blocks, whether they are nested or not. As we can see, in the inside, we get the inner text variable in text, and in the outside, we get the out text value. But we cannot create same named variable in the same block. In here, when we print our variable vtext inside of inner block, we got the inner variable's value. But when we go out, its scope is over now, and we can reach only the outer block's variable. So can you reach the outer variable inside of the inner block? Yes. Let me show you how to do it. The only thing we need to do in here is adding another begin end block with a label before the outer declare keyword and call it with its label. Let's write and see. Now I come up in here and write another begin and two smaller signs, and let's name it with outer, for example, and two greater signs. Now in here we have a vtext, and in here just we are going to write outer dot vtext. Now we can reach the outer variable in here. And in here we need to finish our this begin keyword, so I simply write int and outer. Now let's run it. As we can see, in here we get both int texts in the same dbms outputs, but in here when we write outer.vtext, we get the outer text value. This is outer text value, and we write outer.vtext. Outer is just a name, we can write something different, and we get outer text value. And in here, because this scope is finished, we get outer text value whether we write outer or not. So you can use this not only the first declare but also any block that you want. With this way you can reach both inner and outer variables. If you prepare to PSQL exams, try to learn this well, because this is a subject that a possible question comes from. So this is the end of the lesson. See you in the next lessons.